now it's time for us to discuss more of these headlines in simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Lena, and happy hump day.
Our writer, John, called it. He was like, Adam is always the first one to beat everyone to the punch. Hump day.
Yeah, it certainly is. A hump day, a glass half full day, if you will.
Please, you don't believe that, but I'm glad you're trying to sell it.
I do, certainly. On occasion, though, not every week.
All right, glad to have you. As always, it seems that there's a lot of grounds to cover. Inter-Korean relations have hit, it seems, a new low. The Iowa caucus, the former president, Donald Trump, it seems that he had a landslide victory in Iowa. So some of those headlines to cover. Let's start out with our first pick of the day.
Primary enemy.
So more harsh rhetoric from North Korea. Kim Jong-un says unification with the South is no longer possible and that the constitution should be changed, designated the primary enemy. Let's take a look at his latest wording. I mean, it's kind of a contrast in the sense that he tried to play the more diplomatic good cop to Kim Yo-jong's bad cop. So I guess there's a more of a sense of a heightened risk here.
Certainly, yes. Certainly more harsh rhetoric coming out of the mouth of the North Korean leader, something that wasn't really seen before, especially during the previous administration. But now, of course, the landscape is a bit different under the Yoon administration. Now, he was speaking at the Supreme People's Assembly, which is basically kind of like the rubber stamp parliament of North Korea. And Kim said that the constitution should be amended to educate North Koreans that South Korea is a primary foe, in his words, or an invariable primary enemy. Now, Kim warned that if South Korea infringes on North Korea's territory, airspace, or maritime boundaries by even 0.001 millimeters, it will be considered an act of war. And he also said that if a war breaks out on the Korean Peninsula, the country's constitution should reflect the use of occupying, recapturing, and incorporating the South into its territory. Now, accordingly, he emphasized the need for legal measures to precisely define the realm of sovereignty. So basically saying that the North Korea and South Korea territories and sovereignty is going to be independent from each other and basically taking away any possibility of unification, something that he has alluded to before, but now he's kind of dismantling. Now, he noted that he did not want war, but also had no intention of avoiding it. He said he was taking a new stand on North-South relations, which included dismantling all organization tasked with reunification. He also stressed the importance of educating the people not to use terms that could mislead them into considering that North and South Korea as one nationality. And he called for the deletion of terms like the northern part and national grand unity from the constitution. Kim concluded by saying that if the enemies dare to ignite the flames of war, North Korea will mobilize all its military forces, including nuclear weapons, to resolutely punish its adversaries. Now, in response, President Yoon said that if the North carried out a provocation, the South will retaliate multiple times stronger. And he pointed to the South Korean military's overwhelming response capabilities. And he urged that the South Korean people and government must unite to overcome the deception, propaganda, and agitation of the North Korean regime. So harsh rhetoric coming from both sides.
All right, with that, we move on to our second keyword of the day.
Special Measures Agreement.
So South Korea and the United States have reportedly agreed to begin talks on their next deal on defense cost sharing earlier than planned. This is seen as a move to prepare for the possible re-election of former U.S. President Donald Trump. What's the latest?
Yeah, so if we look at the results of the Iowa caucus, I know it's still early days, but it certainly is a possibility, something that shouldn't be ruled out. And of course, we know how things were under the Trump administration for South Korea as well, when it especially came to defense cost sharing. And so South Korea and the current U.S. administration is being prepared for it. Now, both countries have reportedly reached a consensus to begin negotiations for the 12th SMA within this year. Now, the SMA is an agreement, basically, that defines the amount South Korea will contribute to the cost of the U.S. military presence in the country. Now, in 2021, the two nations finalized the 11th SMA, which applies for 6 years from 2020 to 2025, initiating negotiations for the next SMA while nearly 2 years remain until the end of the last one is a bit unusual. Of course, there is still some ways to go until the current one expires. Now, the early initiation, of negotiations is interpreted as an attempt to minimize potential impacts on the South Korea-US alliance, even if Trump were to return to power. Now, Trump is known for his tough bargaining on such deals. Now, negotiations for the 11th SMA during the Trump administration were tumultuous, to say the least, due to Trump's demands for a significant increase in South Korea's share of the defense cost. Now, the negotiations, which lasted 1.5 years, led to a temporary absence of an agreement and were eventually concluded after Joe Biden took office. However, the completion of the 12th SMA within this year remains uncertain, and it remains to be seen whether a deal could be struck. Now, Seoul's foreign ministry has only said that the last SMA expires at the end of 2025, adding that the government plans to prepare for the next negotiations systematically and strategically while closely consulting with the US. So they're kind of steering clear of making any kind of official stance on the matter, but reports suggest that early discussions are underway.
All right, with that, we move on to our third keyword of the day.
Holiday discount.
So the government plans to set aside a record budget for issuing discount coupons for farm produce and booster supplies before the Lunar New Year holidays. So give everyone a little bit of break or breathing room for the upcoming holidays. Tell us the details.
Yeah, so this is usually the time of year when such items, spike in price, if they haven't already spiked enough already. And so, of course, the government is trying to stabilize those prices as well as kind of spur economic activity and spending as well. Now, according to the plan, the government vowed to spend an all-time high of 84 billion won to provide discount coupons for the purchase of farm, livestock and fisheries goods. It will release reserve stocks of vegetables, fish and salt, and will boost the imports of eggs as well. It'll increase its discount rate from 20% to 30% for products like apples and pears at large supermarkets. That is part of a broader scheme to offer up to 60% discounts, 30% from the government and 30% from the industry and private sector on various products. 200,000 lodging coupons offering a 30,000 won discount will be distributed as well, targeting accommodations outside the capital region for the Lunar New Year holiday period. The interest-free installment period for credit cards will be extended to up to 12 months. Usually with these credit cards, that you can get interest-free installments for about 3, sometimes 6 months for other card issuers as well, but that will be extended to a year. Now, additional benefits such as affiliated discounts and cashback will also be provided. Now, small business owners with annual sales below 30 million won will receive a 200,000 won subsidy for electricity bills. An interest refund of up to 1.5 million won will be provided to small business owners as well who have taken loans from non-banking financial institution. That goes on top of the so-called credit amnesty that's happening as well, where any loan arrears, any records of it will be deleted for small business owners who were unable to pay back loans during the pandemic, especially. Now, the government also plans to supply new loans and guarantees worth 39 trillion won for SMEs. Meanwhile, during the holiday, toll fees on highways, as usual, will be waived. Public parking lots will also be open for free. The government also plans to increase international flight operations by about 10% to meet the demand for the holiday season. So it's not just domestic travel that's high in demand, but also overseas. Now, the government will delay the increase in electricity bills for 3.65 million vulnerable households for another year. That's something we mentioned before in this segment. Now, 700,000 job positions will also be filled early to support income stability for the elderly and vulnerable groups.
All right, so many plans to cover all corners of peaked demand during the holiday seasons. Do you ever come across these headlines and think, am I the only one that's late to booking any flight?
Yes, always. I'm always doing this last minute. And but I have no plans to go anywhere during this holiday. But if I were, I'll probably be doing it last minute. Yeah.
It's the irony of it because we reported on it first, but then we just, deal with our personal matters way late.
Right.
All right, let's move on to our fourth keyword of the day.
End to conflicts.
So the World Economic Forum, commonly known as the Davos Forum, began its full schedule on Tuesday local time, focusing on security crises and global conflicts. You say economy, but I mean, it stretches to just about every other sector, which is why this year it seems the focus is the increasing security crises across the world. What was discussed, Adam?
Yeah, so a lot of those economic difficulties actually do stem from these kind of geopolitical tensions and conflicts. So, of course, those are kind of areas where these international gatherings are focusing. Now, the ongoing war in Ukraine, of course, was a significant topic of discussion as expected. Western allies reaffirmed their unwavering support for Ukraine. Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, emphasized the continuous support for Ukraine, highlighting the need for sustained armed support in her special address. Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, stressed the importance of supplying more weapons to Ukraine as well, linking reliable military support to the success of diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. Stoltenberg also warned against underestimating Russia's military capabilities and mentioned Russia's use of North Korean ballistic missiles. So, yes, it's being presumed that North Korea is supplying military arms to Russia in its use against Ukraine. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, also was present, and he appealed for intensified support and investment for national reconstruction of his country. He emphasized the need for Ukraine to gain air superiority as well, similar to its recent advances in the Black Sea, to kind of give it the upper hand in the conflict. Now, Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor, confirmed America's commitment to supporting Ukraine again. He also expressed concern about various threats, including North Korea, alongside the Ukraine war and the situation in the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian war, and the escalating tensions in the Red Sea, most recently due to Yemen's Houthi rebels' attacks on civilian ships were also key issues that were discussed. Qatar's prime minister stressed that ending the war in the Gaza Strip is crucial to preventing the escalation of conflict in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia's foreign minister also called for an immediate ceasefire, and he added that the kingdom could recognize Israel if a comprehensive agreement were reached that included statehood for the Palestinians as well. Whether his words will be heeded upon remains to be seen, but of course the Israel-Palestine conflict is spreading to other regions of the Middle East as well. It's kind of sparking other conflicts and military tensions also. So yeah, there are continuous calls and reiterations for ends of these conflicts. But the parties in question are pretty adamant that they are going to still continue with the war. So, yeah, we'll have to see how much weight these calls have in terms of ending such conflicts.
All right. And for our final keyword of the day, following the first Republican primary of the 2024 presidential election, what's next? Our last keyword of the day.
Eyeing New Hampshire.
So Republican presidential candidates Donald Trump and the former UN ambassador Nikki Haley, she's a pretty stark contrast to Trump. They began their campaign in New Hampshire following the Iowa caucuses. This is where Haley actually has a fighting chance. What's the latest?
Yeah, so Trump announced a busy schedule in New Hampshire, planning 5 intensive campaign rallies over the next week. His campaign in New Hampshire seems to be a kind of strategic move to consolidate his lead after Iowa and counter any momentum that Haley might gain. Of course, Haley does have a bit of an upper hand when it comes to New Hampshire. Now, Haley, addressing her comparatively lower performance in Iowa, is making a concerted effort to turn the tables in New Hampshire. She criticized Trump for avoiding debates in a post on X, or formerly known as Twitter, suggesting that her next debate could be with either Trump or Joe Biden. Now, Haley's campaign strategy also includes tackling additional events across the state to strengthen her position. The Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, who made a comeback by securing the second position in Iowa, it wasn't much of a difference, though, in terms of the second and third place, is also expected to appeal for votes at a town hall event at New England College in Henniker. Now, despite recording single-digit support in recent polls in New Hampshire, DeSantis is targeting both the states and future primary states like South Carolina. Trump does maintain an 11-point lead, and his support in New Hampshire is relatively weaker compared to other regions where he enjoys kind of an overwhelming majority. Now, Haley's strength in New Hampshire is attributed to her appeal among kind of moderate conservatives, particularly among non-affiliated voters, and so she's trying to capitalize on that, but we'll also have to see if any changes in support for Trump in New Hampshire does happen as well. But of course, Trump is going in and beginning strong, so we'll have to see how things play out from now on.
This is just the beginning, beginning. And we didn't even cover the local general elections today.
Right.
All right, hold your horses, everyone. Thank you so much, Anna, for today's coverage. We'll see you tomorrow.
You're very welcome. See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.